All right. Barely alive. Seeing if I can. How do we add him now? Is he added? Do you know how to add him? No. No, wait, here he is. Now it's popped up.
Am I being heard on the stream?
I think you're on now. I think. Wait, talk.
I'm talking into the microphone. And
All right, I think we're good.
We're good.
All right. Oh my god. This used to be easy, man. I used to just click a button on Google Hangouts. I don't know what happened. There's a gaping hole for somebody to come in, swoop in, and figure out how to make live streaming conversations easy, right? Seems like
it. Isn't that what Twitch is doing?
Is that what we should be using? Should we be using Twitch?
I don't know. I've never used Twitch, so I wouldn't know actually.
I don't know. I mean, we always use the Google Hangouts through YouTube, and then we were using the Jitsi. Now we're using this thing, which actually worked well yesterday. It worked well with you, other than the fact that we kept losing you. So
Yeah.
you think we have better internet today?
I don't know. I mean, sometimes it's more stable, sometimes it's less stable. I mean, we can see what happens, right? See if we get lucky.
Okay.
The internet is a very organic thing, you know. The routes through which the packets are being sent through are constantly changing. So we might just get lucky this time. I don't know.
Okay. Wait, are we sure it's working? Hold on. Are we sure it's working?
Yeah, I hear him.
And it's 100%. All right.
Is the sound from my mic loud enough? Should I make it louder or less loud?
Sounds good on both of us. But just tell me, is the sound good? All right. Yeah, we're good. All right, man. So how you doing, man? It's been
I'm doing fine.
2
How
days.
are you?
Or was it yes? When did we chat? Was it 2 days ago?
We chatted on I think it was a Sunday. Yeah.
Okay.
And
no,
now
but
it's a Tuesday your time, right?
Yes. Thanks again for coming back on.
Thanks for having me back on the show so quickly. You know, it's nice to be a repeat guest. Do you have any other repeat guests?
I think so. Who do we have? I think Howard Chu we had on a few times. A couple, a lot of the coffee chat guys.
Well, I'm in good company then.
Yeah. Well, you've been on that show as well, right?
I've been on Coffee Chat. Yeah, I think I've been on the very first Coffee Chat. And back then it was just like 4 guys joining the Jitsi room.
Yes.
But nowadays it's like you see the Coffee Chat is just full of people, and it's impossible to like really participate in like it's not as comfy as it used to be, so to speak. It's now a bit more crowded, right?
Yeah, no.
It used to be like a fireside chat between like the core community members, but now it's like a very much of a sort of like a town hall.
Yes. Yeah, I was always a coffee chat lurker from day one. I was always looking for any Monero content I could ever find. Like we spoke on the last show, Monero. What was the previous podcast? Monero Observer. What was it called? The one that you wrote?
Monero Monitor with Mike.
Monero Monitor. Yeah, that was great. But yeah, there weren't too many. There's still not too many options. We're one of them.
Speaking of options.
There you go. Beautiful segue. So is that where we left off? I don't even know where we left off. But let's talk about the over-the-counter options feature that's been added to Local Monero. Maybe if you want to just give a quick, once again, overview of what exactly is Local Monero. Why should people why would anybody want to use Local Monero? For what purposes? Why use Local Monero versus any other method for obtaining Monero?
Well, Local Monero is the Monero equivalent of local bitcoins, right? So the reason local bitcoins exists, and the reason Local Monero exists, is because a lot of people, for some reason, can't or won't use centralized exchanges, right? The exchanges that are like where you log in and you have to do KYC, and you're trading, and it's like a stock exchange sort of a thing. There's automatic matching, there's order books and all that stuff, right? That is way less flexible than what we offer on Local Monero. Anybody can register. There's no KYC imposed by us. There may be KYC imposed by some of the traders, like some traders.
Oh my God, he dropped out.
Some traders might only accept your payments if you first go through some sort of, if you send them your ID or whatever. But a lot of traders don't do that, and yeah, you basically you can use any payment method, any currency, anywhere. And this sort of a smooth experience is like what a lot of people prefer, genuinely, when they want to buy or sell some of their cryptocurrency, which is why local bitcoins was so popular in the first place. It was initially, it was like a very convenient place to do your retail, so to speak, buying and selling crypto needs. And yeah, Local Monero does that for Monero. So what we did with AgoraDesk is we thought, well, what if we could make this sort of a smooth experience, but not just with spot trading Monero, but also with trading options, because options with a options are like an instrument that can be used for different strategies that spot trading would not allow you to do. So like with a call option, for example, you could have like a leveraged, sort of like a leveraged long position, right? If you want to invest into a certain sum of Monero, like 100 Monero, but you don't have the cash for 100 Monero, you may only have the cash for like 1 or 2 Monero. Then if somebody is selling an option, a call option for 100 Monero, and the premium for that is only 2 Monero worth of US dollars, then you can buy that, and if the price of Monero goes up, well, then you've only spent 2 Monero, and you got to profit on 100 Moneros worth of price movement. So that way it's like you need way less money now to invest in Monero, and if you can pay. You can pay with PayPal if you want. You can pay with cash by mail, or with ATM cash deposits, bank transfers. Whatever you would do normally, whatever is your most convenient payment method on Local Monero, you can now use that on AgoraDesk to buy like a Monero call option. Or maybe you could hedge your position against currency exchange risk by selling, or rather buying a put option, right? If you're holding 100 Monero and you're worried that the price might go down before the end of the month, and at the end of the month you may have some expense that depends on you being able to pay in US dollars, and you're worried that your Monero value will go down and you won't be able to cover your expenses, then you can buy a put option for the expense amount that you need. And at the end of the month, regardless of how the market moves, you will have the necessary dollars to pay for your expense. So that way you're protected. You are protected against currency risk, and you only pay the premium for that, right? So these sorts of instruments used to only be available on like specialized derivative exchanges, which are used by speculators mostly. But options are not only for speculation. Options can be used as investment strategies, as risk hedging strategies. And yeah, we completely eliminated counterparty risk by escrowing the amount, the underlying amount of every option contract. So if somebody's selling you a call option for 100 Monero, they have to have 100 Monero in escrow, and there's no way for them to run away. There's no way for them to not fulfill their contractual obligations. And for put trades, we don't escrow. We escrow the buyer's Monero, and the first step of a put trade would be the seller paying a cover payment to the buyer, meaning the cover payment is the nominal payment, which is the entire amount basically that the put buyer would receive if they were to choose to exercise the option and to sell their underlying asset, their Monero or Bitcoin or whatever, and minus the premium. So that, using a bit of clever. A little bit of clever techniques there. We managed to only escrow the Monero side of the transaction and not escrow the Fiat side of the transaction, and yet completely eliminate any counterparty risk. And yeah, we also, AgoraDesk integrates Bitcoin spot trading into the platform. So just like you used to trade Bitcoins on local Bitcoins, in a smooth and easy way before they started introducing, all the changes to their platform. All the changes to the platform that made it quite unusable for, the original purpose for which it was used. We now have that experience on AgoraDesk, and it's the same experience you have when you're trading Monero on Local Monero. It's smooth, easy, and any payment method, any currency, anywhere. And we think by having like Bitcoins and Monero side by side on AgoraDesk, we're sort of putting them on the same level for people who are coming in from Bitcoin and looking to maybe other coins to invest into or convert their Bitcoins into, especially now that we have these reports where finally awareness of Bitcoin's lack of privacy is breaking into the mainstream. Having a platform where you have like having a platform like Local Bitcoins where you have Bitcoins and Monero side by side, we think will really introduce a lot of the Bitcoin people to Monero through this avenue. And yeah, all the ads that you post on AgoraDesk, like if you have Monero ads on Local Monero, all your Monero ads will be visible in the Monero section of AgoraDesk. So you don't need to like post an ad on Local Monero and also post an ad on AgoraDesk. Both ads will the ads will be visible on both platforms automatically. And vice versa, if you create a Monero ad on AgoraDesk, it will be visible on Local Monero. And anybody who wants to open a trade with you, they can do it through AgoraDesk, or they can do it through Local Monero. It's the same thing. It's going to be the same trade. So it's very convenient for people who don't want to stop using Local Monero. Like maybe they don't care about trading options, or they don't care about Bitcoin spot trading. In that case, they can just keep using Local Monero, and their ads will automatically be visible to AgoraDesk users. So they will get the AgoraDesk traffic as well without any extra steps from them. And on the other hand, people who would prefer to use Local Monero as a buying experience, if someone posts ads on AgoraDesk, these ads will also be visible on Local Monero. So whoever just wants to keep using Local Monero, nothing changes for them. They just keep using Local Monero as they did before. And yeah, anybody who wants to do, the new stuff, the Bitcoin and options trading, they just use their same Local Monero credentials to log into AgoraDesk. The accounts are completely shared between the two platforms. The reputation is shared. Everything is the statistics. So it's not like you're building up a reputation on a new website.
Very, very cool.
Your local
So-
Monero reputation carries over. Yeah.
Right. So, so I followed you since day one, since you guys launched. And I remember in the beginning, when you were on Monero Monitor, even that's you were kind of being grilled as to why should the Monero community trust you? Who is this guy? Seems like a great service, but you came out of nowhere. Which is everybody. Everybody seems to get that grilling in the Monero community. It's a healthy thing to do.
It's the skeptical community.
Obviously,
Yeah.
yeah, and obviously, I guess you've earned trust throughout the years now, and it's great to see that you're still forging ahead. And so, yeah, I've never actually used Local Monero. I never used Local Bitcoins either. I've almost used both of them a few times, but I just never got to that point. And I guess I've used other methods to obtain Monero. In terms of trading, I'm not a trader. I'm just trying to acquire Monero. But I do hear what you're saying with using options and things like that as a way, not necessarily to quote unquote trade, but to maybe speculate and protect your holdings if you do it in a calculated way. But yeah, me personally, I'm just more of a keep it simple. I'm like the Adam Meister of Monero, which, by the way, I think we're going to be having him on the show soon. So his whole deal is acquire your Bitcoin. I'm kind of that with Monero. Keep it very simple. Let me just slowly acquire my Monero. Not so much concerned about trading it.
Right.
But Local Monero, you guys have been around for a while now, and so have you seen an uptick in usage now that local Bitcoins? I think they've made some changes, right? So I don't think they're allowing cash offers anymore. Is that correct? So I think people are still using a workaround on local Bitcoins to effectively do that, but officially, I don't think you're allowed to go on and say make an offer to sell Bitcoin for cash. So I imagine with you guys being Local Monero, pretty much being the same service but more Monero focused, and now also offering Bitcoin. So have you seen an uptick in usage since that?
Yeah, there's definitely been an uptick in usage.
Very cool.
On the Monero side, we had a little bit of activity on the Bitcoin side, not that much though, because we're obviously not very known yet in the Bitcoin community. So we still have to break through the Bitcoin community. But having the Monero community as a base is very important to our success, because it allows our reputation to sort of carry over into providing this new service for the Bitcoin users. Ideally, of course, we would have preferred if all the users used Monero, right? Because we personally prefer Monero. We're not Monero maximalists, but we're like Monero fans, right? But yeah.
Yeah, just to interlude, I apologize to anybody who listened to this the other day. There's going to be a lot of repeat from what we had, but I think it's fine. Thanks. This is a great conversation. The other thing too is I see Monero being Local Monero, in my mind, makes more sense than local Bitcoin. I mean, what do you need local Bitcoin for? Sure, you could try to obtain your Bitcoin anonymously, and I guess that will give you a better shot at attempting to keep it anonymous as you go. But at the end of the day, it's all your transactions are on a transparent ledger. Whereas Monero, I see there being kind of a real reason to try to acquire it as anonymously as you can. And then obviously it gets maintained in that structure as you use it. With Bitcoins, not so much.
Well, I think the reason why people prefer to acquire Bitcoin is simply because of its acceptance. More places and people accept Bitcoin as payment than Monero. And if they acquire Monero originally, then most of the time they would have to convert it into Bitcoin to pay for whatever they're paying.
Yeah, no, I just mean for the purposes of, I could go
Hodling.
I could go on Coinbase and I could buy Monero. I could buy Bitcoin. Why use local Bitcoin to buy Bitcoin when I could go on Coinbase? Obviously, because you could potentially buy it anonymously, right? But you're buying this thing anonymously, that then it's very hard to then keep it anonymous as you use it. Whereas with Monero, you acquire it on Local Monero anonymously, and then you can maintain its anonymous nature because it is that is the nature of Monero. You get what I'm saying? So like, I don't really see why, as a Bitcoin user, you would go through the extra trouble of using local Bitcoin so much as a Monero person. I would see more of a need for a local Monero versus a local Bitcoin.
Here's the thing, though. Not every not everybody who's using local Bitcoins is using it because they think it gives them extra anonymity. A lot of people who use local Bitcoins use it because they have no other choice, right? Because maybe they don't have the necessary financial infrastructure in their region or their country to allow them to trade on like a centralized Coinbase type of thing. Like for Americans, it's easy. Like you just have Coinbase. It's super quick and simple. But if you're maybe somewhere like Russia, for example, where local Bitcoins is very popular, or used to be very popular before KYC, at least. Venezuela, or it doesn't even have to be like a failing state where there's hyperinflation, right? It can be just a country with pretty strict regulations when it comes to sending money from your bank account to a cryptocurrency exchange, right? Like there's a lot of countries that do regulate that are not like in a state of hyperinflation. China, for example, right? On China, these sorts of platforms like local Bitcoins are extremely popular due to a very uncertain regulatory nature that exists in China. And there used to be a lot of Chinese centralized exchanges where you could easily trade, but they all got closed down. Some of them moved to outside jurisdictions, but they get blocked by the Chinese government, so people have to use VPNs. Like it gets complicated, and people just in the end choose to do peer-to-peer over-the-counter trading a la local Bitcoins.
And so what is the KYC AML situation on local Bitcoin and on local Monero? What is it? Is it required for everything? Is it?
I'm not an expert on local Bitcoin's KYC, but from what I understand, they now have they do require verification. It used to be that they only required it. Originally, they had no KYC. Then relatively
that was
recently,
the local Bitcoins that made sense to me.
That's right.
I get what you're saying. There's the other use cases where even if you're going to go through the KYC AML process, it still makes sense for you to use. It may still make sense for you to use local Bitcoin because there's no other way for you to obtain it, and obviously local Monero as well.
Yeah, and even without the KYC. So the original local Bitcoins, right, the golden age, so to speak, is when there was no KYC, right? That's when it gained its traction. Then relatively recently, they started doing KYC for sellers. Like if you're selling Bitcoin, then you'd have to go through KYC. And I think it was like above a certain amount or something. Maybe $1,000. I don't remember. But and then afterwards, they started doing KYC for both buyers and sellers, starting from October 1st, I think. So at the beginning of this month, they started doing it, enforcing it like for buyers and sellers. And the situation on local Monero is, we're still in the golden age of no KYC. Now, one
Yeah,
reason
let's talk about that. Yeah, go ahead.
I think one reason why, and probably the main reason why Local Bitcoins is doing KYC and we're not doing KYC is because Local Bitcoins is based in the European Union. I mean, that's if you're based in the European Union, like they got a war on cash in there, they got a war on crypto in there. They are very strict when it comes to money movements between people, right? They don't like money moving freely. They want to have everything under control in the European Union. And a company that's based in the European Union will obviously be under tremendous pressure to implement these sorts of measures. Local Monero is not based in the European Union. Now, I don't know why Local Bitcoins decided to stay in the European Union. I guess the founders of the company, who are Finnish, they're from Finland,
Right.
and their offices are in Finland. So I assume the reason why they're staying in the EU is just because
the inertia, they're there already. And
well, yeah. They like to be there. Their offices are there. That's their homeland. They're just used to it, right? So that's why they don't want to move outside of it. But
which is very interesting, because you're very well positioned to kind of take that niche of what they were meant to be, because now you are what Local Bitcoin was meant to be. Number one, it's Local Monero, which makes more sense. And number two, you could actually still to this day, that there's no KYC AML.
Yeah,
to me that makes a lot more sense as a platform for that niche that you're in. I mean, that seems to be the value proposition.
Absolutely, this is the very core of the business model of a peer-to-peer over-the-counter cryptocurrency exchange is no KYC enforced site-wide. So if you start doing KYC, there is no point almost no point in your business anymore. So I guess the guys behind Local Bitcoins, thought that they have a large enough user base so that even though they will lose a lot of their people to the KYC enforcement, they still have enough people still using the platform for it to be sustainable, because they've been around for so long and they're so popular. I guess they decided it makes more sense for them to do it this way. But yeah, in our case, we are focused on always being on top of the game, and when it comes to regulations, right? Always making sure that you are that your jurisdiction is not forcing you to do these kinds of things, and if the regulatory situation is poised to change, then we would move on short notice to another jurisdiction, and that is a core sort of principle of what we're doing. And if as long as there is at least one place on Earth where we can do this without doing KYC site-wide, we will move to that jurisdiction. So that's how we're gonna ensure that it stays the way it is, right?
Does it make sense to ever have a kind of a distributed version of Local Monero, like kind of like a BISC for Local Monero, like a?
Oh yeah, it makes sense to have both, right? It makes sense to have BISC on the one hand, right? For people who
does BISC have the over-the-counter concept? No, obviously BISC is.
No, I think they do. I think they do have Fiat over-the-counter trading, where it works kind of the same way it works on Local Monero. I think they do.
Okay, okay.
But the differences are, like, for example, for BISC, you'd have to download specific software. You have to be a little bit more technically adept with it. But if you're just a guy in Venezuela or wherever who Googles buy Monero with a local payment method, he's not going to come up to BISC. He will, in the search results, he will find Local Monero, and
Right.
he will be able to simply through opening the website, logging in, and conducting the trade, be done with it, as opposed to having to figure out BISC. So there's a place for both, I think.
Right. You're sacrificing that kind of that ease of use, that user experience
Yes.
that you get with Local Monero, and I guess that obviously is the nature of it. There's probably no way of overcoming that and having some ideal version of Local Monero where you don't run the risk of having to deal with the regulations and potentially being shut down at the same time, where it's as easy as going onto a platform and just logging in. And right, I mean, there's no way of
and even if you talk about
that idea.
Even if you're talking about regulations, because you mentioned it, I assume because it is your belief that a decentralized exchange like BISC is completely beyond any regulatory body. I've recently read a report by a financial sort of regulatory body in the United Kingdom. I forgot what it was, but probably some like her Royal Majesty's financial enforcement or something, and they wrote, and this was in the news actually recently on all the cryptocurrency subreddits. It was pretty big that the UK was planning to regulate open source software that facilitates cryptocurrency wallets or cryptocurrency exchange. So something like BISC, which is open source. Like, I don't know how they're going to do that. What they're going to do? Are they going to like prosecute developers, or are they going to go onto the platform?
What agency was it that was looking to do this?
I don't remember the agency.
Okay.
It was in the news recently. If you like go through the cryptocurrency subreddit news for the past month, you'll definitely.
I do remember seeing something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So even stuff like BISC, like if the governments decide that they want to regulate, I don't know how they're going to do that, but they're definitely going to try if they decide to do it.
Yeah, I mean that's a little bit like back in the day, right, when they tried to stop basic encryption, right, things like that, like the PGP or whatever, and so I mean it's kind of, I don't know. Do you really think we're going to get to that point where I mean, it seems like we're moving pretty close to it. Hopefully not in this country. I know a lot of people have lost faith in this country for those purposes. But I'm ultimately hoping that the U.S. Constitution may save us a little bit at the end of the day in terms of protecting cryptocurrency and cryptography in general. Yeah.
The First Amendment is the absolute basis for the United States supremacy when it comes to stuff like the IT industry, right? Because in Europe, in the United Kingdom, even there is no First Amendment protection, right? Something can be classified as hate speech or, I don't know, offensive speech or blasphemous speech, or like, in Poland, I think they don't allow you to even like show a hammer and sickle. Not that I would personally want to, demonstrate a hammer and sickle, but some people might, and they would get fined, right? So there's, in Germany, like they block, half the video games that get released there or something. It's like it's terribly it's a very controlled information environment, right? But in the US, I think you could argue that cryptocurrency is a form of speech, because that's how they won the encryption case that happened in the 90s, I think. When there was something about exporting encryption algorithms outside the US or something, and and the company got sued by the U.S. government for violating some sort of a federal regulation on that, and they won in the Supreme Court by arguing, the First Amendment, that this computer code is speech, right? Because you can like print it out on paper, you can say it out loud.
Exactly.
You can say the same thing about crypto. Crypto is speech. So as long as you can make that argument in court,
Exactly.
and you can plead the First Amendment, I think the U.S. will be safe. And thankfully, the cryptocurrency industry in the U.S. is very healthy. And if they do need to make that case before the Supreme Court, there are, the resources exist to hire good lawyers and to take. So yeah, America is definitely in the best position in this case.
You are cutting out a little bit,
It's
but it's great, man. You have great commentary, man. I really appreciate your insights. Yeah, we had we did a show just on that topic at one point, and I always try to kind of delve into that further. For me, that's what I'm always thinking about in the back of my mind when I try to think about Monero and whether or not it's something that's here to stay. And I always try to think about it kind of on a fundamental level and then a philosophical level. I see it as free speech money. I was trying to think on a level of like really fundamentally, right? So free speech. Even in this country, right? There's no such thing as true, ultimate, pure free speech, right? So there's always certain protections that are put in place, restrictions. You can't go into a movie theater and scream fire, and that being an obvious one.
Oh, actually, that particular precedent was overturned.
Okay, well,
that was
perhaps bad example. Well, no. I mean,
it was.
That's inciting. Okay, well, you can't incite a riot. You can't.
Yeah.
There are restrictions to free speech. The most fundamental protection is basically political speech, right? The whole philosophy behind it is to allow people to congregate and speak so that tyrants don't overtake governments, right? That's really like the fundamental principle behind free speech is to prevent that. So we make sure we protect political speech so that things like that, so the minority opinions could always evolve and come about. But there are obviously restrictions. Practically speaking, there's legal restrictions to what type of to speech. I can't post child pornography, on my computer, right? That is a form of speech, but society has decided, not a good idea. But point I'm trying to get at is, what is pure is you can always speak. Like speech itself is censorship resistant, right? Just like kind of thought is, right? So nobody could stop you from speaking words, right? They could after the fact
jail you.
After the fact, they could say what you said was wrong and there may be consequences. But we're at the point, still, thankfully, we live in a world where me and you can be in a room and I could effectively say whatever I want. You don't have the ability to press a button and stop the words from coming out of my mouth. The words will come out. I'm just getting to a interesting thought that I had. So I feel like Monero more effectively mimics that in the digital world than Bitcoin does, because it will allow everyone to effectively speak through, because basically it's more censorship resistant because of its nature. So the transactions and things will be able to take place without being stopped. Whereas in Bitcoin, it seems like it can, right? Like you can press that button to send, but because of blacklisting and the ability to follow transactions, that effectively it becomes censored, right? So that it's like you could almost be stopped before you even take action. I know that was kind of a convoluted way of getting to a point, but do you think Monero is more censorship resistant than Bitcoin?
Of course. I mean,
because some would argue, oh, all right, well, I could always send Bitcoin no matter what. You can't stop me from sending Bitcoin. But I feel like effectively, you can be stopped.
yeah, you can be stopped from sending Bitcoin, and you can be prevented from anyone else accepting your Bitcoin, right? I think that's the main, like, there. I can imagine a government sort of a list of that's published on a special website, a list of all addresses from which accepting Bitcoin is illegal or something like that, right?
Right.
And if it is detected on the network that somebody is accepting Bitcoin from them, then some sort of action immediately gets taken against these people, and nobody else obviously wants to accept the coins. So now those coins are worthless.
And the analogy to speech itself would be as if me and you were in this room, and every word you said, you knew was going to be recorded and put on a ledger. So granted, and saved forever. So granted, you could say it. You could say whatever you want, but it's going to be recorded permanently on a ledger. So it may feel like you could say whatever you want, but because it's saved and recorded permanently, it's, retroactively, it can be censored when it's realized what you said shouldn't have been said. And so with Monero, I feel like it kind of can more, it could more closely mimic this concept of being able to fluidly communicate on a very base level of, and obviously it's in the form of transacting value. But I see those two things as being similar. But yeah, that's something I think about often when I try to kind of boil it down to what these protocols are supposed to be about. And I feel like Monero lets you fluidly transact value without censorship, and a key component to that being that your transactions aren't permanently saved on a ledger for everybody to see.
Yep, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So, yeah. So I mean, the other day we were talking about, I guess, the recent news. We got into some of the things that came up recently. You want to chat about that again, or
sure if you want.
What else?
No problem.
Do you want did we fully cover the so local Monero? I mean, local Bitcoin. So recently they've changed, like we said, so you can't use cash, because that's kind of a big thing that people were talking about. You can't make there's no more cash sales of Bitcoin. With local Monero, that's still an option. There's no KYC, AML, given where you guys are located, so the regulations you have to deal with. So I guess the big question is then, so really you guys just see it as this is what you're going to attempt to maintain this this feature of local Monero kind of no matter what.
As long as it's legally possible, yeah.
As long as it's legally possible, even if that means kind of moving around to different jurisdictions.
Yeah,
because I think that's the big question that everybody has.
We are very mobile. We are very fluid. We can move around quickly. Like it's as I said, it's part of our core sort of business. And when we structure the business specifically, keeping this in mind always, that we need to whatever happens, we need to move on short notice, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're constantly on the ready. We're not, stuck in Finland because we like the mountains there. As soon as we get the first indicators that the regulatory environment is changing, we will be on the move.
People, a question that's coming up related to this, people saying, do you ever think it will be easy to purchase Monero? There'll be easy on Fiat on-ramps more than there are today. I mean, we have Kraken. We spoke about on the show the other day, Poloniex used to be one, but now is effectively no longer that for U.S. residents. BTSE just announced actually, or Bitsy, that they're offering Monero spot trading, but
It's crypto only. It's not fiat.
Crypto only. Oh no, I think that they're offering fiat as well, right? But I guess that's
No.
to US
It's crypto
customers?
only.
Is it? Okay.
Spot
So it's
Monero spot
crypto
trading is versus crypto pairs. Yeah, it's not fiat pairs, as far as I know.
Okay, I think I saw it was fiat as well, but it just wasn't for U.S. customers. I'm not entirely clear on that.
Okay, maybe, sure.
I don't know, but I guess the larger question is, will we eventually? It seems like the FUD will say that it's becoming more difficult to buy Monero with fiat directly. Is that just a temporary thing? Where do you see this going? Will it be easy to buy Monero with fiat directly?
I think it depends on the region, and it depends on the time frame we're talking about. If we're talking about long run, maybe 20 years ahead, 30 years ahead, I think it's going to be way easier to buy crypto and use crypto and Monero, probably if it's still around by then, if it's still the dominant quote unquote privacy coin by then. It's going to be way easier, right? Like in Venezuela, right? On the one hand, it was easy before the hyperinflation started, relatively easy, and then it suddenly became harder and harder as government regulations started piling on, and it became more difficult for normal Venezuelans to access mainstream financial institutions, right? But then there comes a point where regulations don't matter anymore, because the people have a desperate need for a store of value or a medium of exchange, and that's when they figure out ways to create fiat on-ramps. So when the question that was asked, I assume when they were talking about fiat on-ramps, they meant like centralized exchanges accepting XMR USD pairs, and you can deposit USD and withdraw XMR, right? That's one version of a fiat on-ramp, but there are many more versions of fiat on-ramps. There's ATMs stationed around where you live. That's an on-ramp. There is traders on Local Monero or wherever else that are offering their services. That's an on-ramp. So I think even if more regulations are piled on, it certainly might affect big centralized exchanges. It certainly might make the life of a centralized exchange owner very difficult. However, this is very democratic in a way, because as soon as the big centralized exchanges become unviable, that sort of opens the door for like the smaller, medium-sized and smaller-sized people trading on Local Monero and being brokers or being or placing ATMs and etc. So this is a pretty ancient practice. Like I think in the Middle East and in India, they have this thing called Hawala. Have you heard of it?
Yeah.
Have you heard of Hawala, Doug?
Yes.
Right. So you know what it is, right? It's basically like an ancient sort of like traditional way of doing a money transmitting network that existed like for a very long time in the Muslim world, that is based on brokers settling transactions between each other with just by trust and an honor system, right? And it existed despite all these extremely authoritarian regimes existing in these places. It survived, right? I think crypto is much more nimble than Hawala can be, and
well, it's got the power of the internet behind it
Yeah,
as well,
yeah.
and it's
and you don't even need really the internet. Like if we assume that the internet shuts down, like as long as the people as long as the people have like communication equipment, they can have like mesh networks that have like endpoints that connect with the outside world, and they'd still be able to synchronize their blockchains. So it's fiat on ramps in terms of short term, like maybe in the next few years. And if we're talking strictly centralized exchanges, I could certainly see that as the regulatory environment becomes more strict, as Western nations are especially the European Union, becoming more aggressive towards cryptocurrency. Kraken, for example, might be pressured to delist all their Euro XMR pairs, for example, right? So yeah, it may get harder in terms of centralized exchanges, but there will always be smaller dealers on peer-to-peer over-the-counter platforms to fill in the gap.
Right. Now, what's your opinion on that in terms of, let's say, short term, right? So whatever, next few years, given the current trend, let's say, Kraken did do something like that. They made it difficult to purchase Monero with euros or maybe even dollars. How do you see that having? I mean, I guess some people would say obviously it's going to have a negative effect on the price because it's going to become more difficult to buy. But could it potentially have the effect that we see with something like the regulation of when you make it more difficult to buy a gun, everybody runs out and goes and buys a gun before those regulations kind of hit. Do you kind of potentially see that effect with Monero? So people's like get your Monero now when it's still easy to purchase your Monero. How do you see that going down?
That might be a possibility, though. I do think it's a little bit suppressed by the fact that Monero is not as widely accepted as Bitcoin is. So I think the prime mover in the market is still Bitcoin. Hopefully that would change in the future. But if Monero specifically gets regulated out of existence on platforms like Kraken, I think what's more likely to happen is that people would just buy Bitcoin and convert it into Monero, because maybe the premium of the conversion fees is more attractive than trying to get Monero somewhere on peer-to-peer over-the-counter platforms. It depends on where you are and what centralized platforms can you access, right? If you're in Russia, for example, you have no access to Kraken unless you have foreign accounts. Because the Russian government strictly regulates Russian bank accounts, and a Russian cannot send to an exchange like Kraken. The transaction would get frozen, and the bank account may even get closed, but they can still buy it on peer-to-peer over-the-counter exchanges. So if they're interested in specifically Monero and not Bitcoin, then yeah, they would definitely go the Local Monero route. But if they're interested if they have access to centralized exchanges and they're interested in Monero, they might go through Bitcoin. So it might lead to an increase in Bitcoin price, which would indirectly it also increases the Monero price, I guess, if the demand for Monero goes up. But it's I think it's more of a question of more merchants accepting Monero, and merchant acceptance of Monero is this increase is gradual, but as the fungibility question becomes more poignant, I think this will accelerate. And actually, I think this is an important point that might like if we can imagine the downfall of Bitcoin, not that we want the people who are holding Bitcoin to lose their savings. I'm just saying that how Bitcoin would like lose its position as number one, and something like Monero would instead become number one in terms of acceptance and market cap and all that. I can imagine it happening this way. If government starts really regulating and doing it in a relatively smart way. So not how they do it nowadays, where they just try to control the they the foreign exchange, basically, or the bank accounts of people sending it, right? But they actually start monitoring the wallets. They actually start, prosecuting the merchants who accept certain coins, and especially if they do something like they publish a list of addresses that are that have been involved in criminal activity. As that list gets larger and larger and larger, and as the effective supply of bitcoins becomes smaller and smaller and smaller, right? Because more and more it's called Gresham's law, right? It's an economic law that good money drives out bad money, right? And people are going to sort of hodl the good bitcoins, and they're going to spend the bad bitcoins, and eventually all the bitcoins, eventually a growing sort of proportion of the total Bitcoin supply will become bad bitcoins that are on a government list that might land you in a federal prison, right? As the effective supply of Bitcoin becomes smaller and smaller, people are going to be starting to realize that, oh, this isn't really a store of value. I need to jump ship, man. And of course, the first thing they're going to see when they're jumping ship, the first thing they're going to care about when jumping ship is, how do I make sure that this never happens to me again, right? That my Bitcoin address doesn't get blacklisted and I lose all my money, because it turns out that the guy that was using these Bitcoins before me, was involved in child pornography, and the government list updated only after I took the money from him, right? So they would specifically Google, coins that don't have privacy issues, and the first result they get in Google, at least today, would be Monero, right? And that's how I imagine capital flight into Monero might happen. So in a sense, you're right, Doug, that regulations might in fact lead to an increase in the usage of Monero, not because of the fiat on-ramps being shut down and people are like, oh no, they're coming to take my guns, I'm going to go buy some more guns, but in the sense of more regulation makes and regulation that's smart in the sense of it targets the sort of money laundering, anti-money money laundering activity that they're trying to, or at least they're saying that they're trying to prosecute. These sorts of regulations actually will cause, I think, a huge capital flight into Monero, because Bitcoin will become bad money and Monero will become good money, and everybody's going to want to spend their Bitcoin or sell their Bitcoin, and everybody's going to want to hold Monero or buy Monero, right? So this is how I imagine it would happen.
I mean, it's basically how it happened to me. I mean, not that anything of mine got blacklisted, but just the realization that it could. When I had that realization, and realizing, to me, it's worth less. It's like, would I rather have $1 million in a hidden box somewhere that nobody can see, or that's in a glass case that's sitting on my front lawn? And for me, that was just like, whoa, okay. And to the point where I may not be able to use that money in that glass case because the government may say, hey, we see that $1 million, and we're saying that $1 million actually isn't $1 million. That's, illegal $1 million.
It's like having sorry, Doug, but it's like building on your metaphor. It's like having $1 million in that glass case, and the government might have a lottery on the and if the number that happens to be the last number of the serial number of the banknote, that banknote becomes void, right? It's like the government having a lottery where, like, every month, if your banknotes end with a serial number of 9, then that banknote is void, right? That's so. Not only is your money in a glass case, there's a 10% chance every month or something that some of that money becomes completely worthless, right?
Yeah. So why do you think we're not seeing? Obviously, we're talking about scenarios wherein it becomes kind of more mainstream notice. But a lot of smart people out there, especially in the Bitcoin world. I think we touched on this a little bit on the last time we spoke. Is it just that they're so invested in Bitcoin emotionally and whatever, that, like, why are they not concerned about that and hedging and saying, you know what? I mean, maybe they are, but wouldn't we be seeing a little bit more of a price effect at this point versus Bitcoin? I kind of see Monero at least being the ultimate hedge to Bitcoin, if nothing more. So I mean, smart people, they own Bitcoin, they own millions of dollars of Bitcoin, and they're thinking like that analogy. My Bitcoin is here for the world to see, and potentially, it can be regulated out of existence if it's blacklisted or whatever. Why aren't we? Why are they willing to overlook that? I mean, they're obviously realizing this. What do you think that's about?
Well, whenever I wonder on things like these, I like to open CoinMarketCap, and then I just look at the top 10 coins on CoinMarketCap, and I just say to myself, "Oh, the market is completely irrational right now." So there is, in my opinion, a sort of immatureness to the market that exists at this point. It may be that the overwhelming majority of the participants in the cryptocurrency market right now don't really care about fundamentals. They only care about making a buck on speculating. And while this is the main driver for the price movements of the various cryptocurrencies involved in the market, I think the situation will stay the same. I think as the market gets more mature, fundamentals will start to matter more. Bitcoin has very strong fundamentals in terms of its acceptance, right? Well, that's not a fundamental, I guess. That's just
network effect
beside the fundamentals. Yeah, but I think the only reason it's the most accepted is because it's it's the most popular, familiar, the first one, right? So, but that can be overcome, right? It'll take time.
Right.
It'll take time,
it's
and
first mover advantage, not first
right.
mover
It's
guarantee.
first mover advantage. That's right. It'll take time to overcome, and we're gonna start seeing it, I think, only when we stop seeing, you know, shit coins in the top 10 of coin market cap. But as long as as Monero is not like in the top top 3 or you know top 2 or honestly top 1, I think Monero is undervalued. I think you should be hodling and you should be buying more Monero. But of course, rule number 1 of Monero is don't buy Monero. So you know that's a problem, I guess. I think we need to maybe take another look at the rules and reformulate them.
Yeah, no, I mean, I couldn't say it any better. I mean, I think I've said it on this show. It's the one reason I don't want to do this show is because I don't like telling people about Monero, because I kind of see it as a great opportunity to slowly buy some up before the market realizes. I mean, maybe I'm just being naive myself, but
well, Doug, what you should do is you should buy Monero call options on AgoraDesk before every show.
You there? Did we lose you?
Yeah. No, you should
Okay,
you should buy
okay.
Monero call options before every show. That way, when the show is released, you get a nice profit.
Yeah, there you go. Let me see if there's anything else to touch upon. I mean, we talked about the recent news and the FUD with that porn site that the child porn.
Right.
So I mean, not FUD. It's reality. It is. I mean, it's the ultimate predicament, right? And it's predictable that this was going to happen. We spoke about this, that there was going to be some nefarious use of this technology, and nothing worse than that. And it's the type of thing where you just can't, it makes it hard to formulate an argument as to why this technology is so great when the counter argument is, well, it could be used for these nefarious things. And luckily we were able to catch people with Bitcoin because it had this failure, which I guess some would now consider a feature, the transparent blockchain. Whereas with Monero, they could have gotten away with it. And it is slightly frustrating that it makes it very difficult to argue about the features of Monero and why ultimately it's a technology that will help us preserve liberty in the digital age, when you see an example of what it could be used for at its worst. So I don't know if you have any further comment on that. I think we pretty much touched upon it last time, but maybe if you want to say a word or two, since we deleted that episode.
I think last time what it came down to is that Bitcoin should only be used by governments and pedophiles. That's a joke to the Bitcoin maximalists. It's just a joke. Okay, don't take it too hard, too much. But to expand on that point is, you want the bad people using Bitcoin, because that way they're easier to track down, right? So the pedos should keep using Bitcoin. See, if they use Bitcoin, then it's easier to catch them. Although someone in the previous video that we had that got deleted was someone in the chat commented that they actually used IPs to find them as opposed to tracking the Bitcoins.
Okay, but it was through chain analysis, no? Or
maybe they used chain analysis to analyze how much money went through it, but I didn't dive into the comment source, so maybe he's wrong. But yeah, anyway, assuming it was the chain analysis that led to the capture of these bad people.
We're gonna try to get that company on this show. By the way, well, I mean we'll see what happens.
Oh, if I were that company, I wouldn't want to come on this show because they'd have to admit that they got nothing against Monero. But anyway, on the last video, basically, my comment on this situation is that it's liberty versus security. if we could somehow ensure that only bad people could use Bitcoin and all the good people use Monero, that would be ideal, but we can't. So there's always there's a trade-off that has to happen. And on net, I think the trade-off is positive of having Monero versus not having Monero. Yes, some bad people may use Monero, but the good people that are using Monero will far outweigh the bad people using Monero. And I've also made the point that I think there is a place for transparent blockchains in this world, and that place is for example, government accounting, where you want to see how the funds are used by public officials. Exactly every transaction that's happening. That should be public knowledge, and for that reason, Bitcoin can be very useful, right? So, bad people and governments should be using Bitcoin. Everybody else should be using Monero.
There you have it. I gotta give the Cake Wallet sponsorship spiel. We did it
Go
on
ahead.
the last show, but I think you had said you don't. Oh no, you're not disclosing. You may or may not have an iOS wallet, but if you did, I would hope you would choose Cake Wallet. Like I said on the last show, we here support. I've supported it. I actually reached out to Vic very early on when he launched Cake Wallet, just like you were getting grilled by Monero Monitor as to whether or not you should be trusted. I kind of did the same thing with Vic when he launched Cake Wallet, and personally reached out to him. Somehow I had known that he lived in New York through Reddit, and I met up with the guy. So we have a long-term relationship, and just been extremely impressed with Cake from day one. And they've just managed to create a great product, open source, and always aligned with the ideals of the community. I'll leave it at that. So yeah, if you have iOS, looking to buy some Monero off Local Monero, send it to your Cake Wallet.
Nice.
Yeah, there you go. It's we didn't have sponsors until recently, and now we're looking if we're being very choosy and selective with who we align with. Obviously, we want to keep this show as journalistic as possible, so trying to align ourselves with products that we actually personally use and believe in, and that are aligned with the ideals of the Monero community. So Cake being the first one. What do you think, man? Anything else to discuss? This was great. I mean, you were cutting out a little bit, but well, a lot better than last time, and I'm glad we did it again. I think.
I think this was well within the margin of acceptability of content.
Yes.
I think we did very well. I'm very pleased.
What'd you change, man? You came out of your bomb shelter over there. You moved up a few levels.
No, I didn't change anything. We just got more lucky this time, I think.
All right. I'm just kidding. Yeah. What do you think? Any last words?
The last words would be, I think, if you have any questions for me, I'm very easily reachable on Reddit. I'm Alex_LocalMonero on Reddit. Twitter @LocalMonero Co. or @AgoraDesk. If you want to contact us on Telegram, we're very active on Telegram. @LocalMonero or @AgoraDesk, same thing. Any suggestions you might have, any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. And I think this was a great show, and I thank you very much, Doug, for being so patient with trying to set this up and trying all these different things and moving away from Jitsi. I know it's been a huge hassle, and then you had to arrange change your plans for three evenings in a row, I guess, right?
Yeah, no, it's I work my non-crypto day job So we're not the most organized over here, as you could see, but the primary goal is to get the content out there. So and yeah, I didn't want to miss this opportunity. This is great. And I think I've said it before. I'll say it again. I think you're making a good contribution to the community with Local Monero. I guess you guys are what, like 3 years in the making now?
This is the third year of our operation. Yes.
So best of luck to you. As I just said with Cake, so I would include you guys as being, a company, a service that's well within the philosophies of Monero. So keep up the good work. You guys are fighting the good fight, trying to build a product and a service, a utility that the community really needs, which is the ability to buy Monero peer to peer, which is the way it should be going down. So once again, thank you for that. And yeah, man, good luck with everything.
Thanks, and good luck to you too. You've been doing a great job on Monero Talk, taking over Mike, Big Red Machine's previous job, and I think you're doing great. It's like you're getting better every time, and look, now you're a master of OBS and Lightstream Studio in addition to Jitsi. So who knows? Maybe the problems that we had in the previous podcasts might lead to an increase in the overall qualities if you maybe switch from Jitsi to Lightstream now, right?
Yeah, it's funny you say that. Yeah, no, I think it is going to have a positive effect if we could continue to use Lightstream, because I think there's a lot we could do with this now. I think we might do the green screen, because it seems like that's an easy thing to do with this system, and maybe we'll try getting a little more fancy now.
A blessing in disguise.
A blessing in disguise. All right. Well, thanks again. Thanks, man. Appreciate it, Alex. It was a great talk.
All right. Bye.
Cheers, brother. I'll talk to you.